Welcome back to This Week in Sheffield. I'm Adam Husicka and we've got a lot in store for you today. With the US election just behind us, we'll dive into how it could impact us here in Sheffield. We've also got the latest from sport and music, plus 2 exclusive interviews covering the budget and the environment. Here are today's headlines. With the US election having taken place this week, we take a look back at the most significant moments from the campaigns. Social media has given us plenty of moments to remember. A Sheffield-based radio station, Mondo Radio, took over the popular Haggler's Corner to throw a party with some of the city's best DJs on the lineup. People from all over the city came down to dance, mingle and have a pint. The Sheffield SU organised a World Cup-inspired football tournament at the Wave pitches, where people from different countries and backgrounds became friends and competed to be the best. The US election has been contentious and long. Today we take a look back at what US students in Sheffield have thought about their country's political scene and what their opinions are about the future of the White House. And stay tuned until later for 2 exclusive interviews. I'll be speaking to the Mayor of South Yorkshire about how the budget is going to impact the region. I'll also speak to the Sheffield Students' Union Sustainability and Welfare Officer Nadya Ghani about what Sheffield is doing to reach climate commitments and what support there is available to students facing financial hardships. Now, the US election campaign definitely has not been a smooth one, with both sides battling it out over the past few months. However, beside political stress and uncertainty over what will happen, the campaigns have given us many memorable moments, which have all been very well documented on social media. Forge TV's head of entertainment, Nadya Ghani, has the story.
2024 has been an interesting year so far, to say the least. It's hard to say whether the US presidential election or pop sensation Charli XCX dropping her Brat album has had a bigger global impact, but these two things are inextricably linked. Kamala Brat edits on social media undoubtedly triggered a wave of online support for the then VP, especially amongst younger voters.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
They framed her as cool and fresh, a break from old white men, and someone who could usher in a new era for US politics. It solidified her position as the natural choice to take over from Joe Biden as the Democrats' presidential candidate, though it hasn't been easy for her to shake off the Sleepy Joe rhetoric clouding Biden's presidential legacy. It has been a tight race, with Kamala Harris keeping a moderate to small lead for the majority of it. Polls now show her around 1 percentage point ahead of Trump. An unconventional race to power had an equally unconventional debate.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
On the Republican side, there was a shift in Trump's image following the assassination attempts against him. He appeared, ear-bandaged, at the Republican conference, taking the stage with an almost folk hero-like presence. The man who faced death. In the eyes of his most loyal supporters, a candidate who would put it all on the line for his country. A true patriot. However, the Republican campaign took a hit recently after comedian Tony Hinchcliffe made an extremely controversial comment about Puerto Rico.
But there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
This triggered reggaeton music royalty Nicky Jam to announce to his 43.5 million Instagram followers that he's pulling his support for Trump. Both Kamala and Trump have had their fair share of celebrity endorsements. The star-studded cast at the Democrat rallies would probably make for a better playlist. But the excitement for guest speakers at the Republican rallies is pretty unmatched.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the greatest capitalist in the history of the United States of America, Elon Musk!
So who can we expect to win? With so many shocking, unpredictable, and even hilarious events making up the defining moments of this presidential race, the 5th of November is sure to hold some more surprises. Nadya Ghani, Forge TV.
The popularity of live music is ever growing in Sheffield, with students and residents flocking to spots all over the city to catch a glimpse of their favourite artists, musicians and DJs. One of the frontrunners in this space is Mondo Radio, a grassroots organisation who held their second fundraiser party of the year in the famous cultural hub of Haggler's Corner in Lowfield. Our co-editor reports from the scene.
I'm here outside at Haggler's Corner where Mondo Radio are hosting their fundraising party. Let's go in and see what the vibes are like.
Mondo Radio is a community radio station based in Sheffield. We started 2 years ago. It's just a platform to put on. It's mainly based around electronic music, but just aims to be a platform to sort of foster creativity in Sheffield and beyond. Yeah. So it's a fundraiser. Mondo's completely self-funded and run by volunteers, so money's always quite tight, but doing events like this that raise the funds sort of allows us to keep going.
It's been great. It's my first time at Hackers Corner and I've really enjoyed it. The music's been so good and yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
The evening was really good, yeah. We came straight after a movie, we caught some dance moves, caught a couple beers. It was a really great night, yeah. Yeah, I think it's the community radio around Sheffield, so I think they put on some really cool events at gut level as well, so you've got to catch the next event there.
It's been amazing. I've missed such amazing football. It's such good cause. I'm so old now. It's such a student-wide event, which is brilliant.
The great vibes tonight is just another example of how amazing Sheffield's music is and how organisations like Mondo are working tirelessly to push the scene forward. The future is bright for Mondo and I, for one, cannot wait for their next event. All data for This Week in Sheffield.
Now, no sport has the power to bring people together as much as football does. On the field, everyone is equal, and the only thing that matters is playing the beautiful game. It's for this reason that the Sheffield Students' Union organised an all-ability Football World Cup, where students represented their respective countries in a fun all-ability competition. William Atherton has the story.
I'm here at the Wave Sports pitch for Sheffield University's first ever Football World Cup. Today we'll see lots of different teams from different nationalities all compete to become the best.
So today is the Football World Cup, which is open to any member of the University of Sheffield and Sheffield Hallam, and it's just a chance for anyone from the university to come and play football. It's a great community builder, you can represent your country. Hopefully you'll meet some new people and again just play some football. I know that some of the barriers to sport and joining club sport can be quite intimidating and joining the Black and Gold community, but sport's really important for for physical and mental health. So I was trying to just provide as many opportunities as I can for students to come take part in different sports, and hopefully they can meet some new teammates and maybe want to join in Campus League next year.
While today is obviously a big competition for all the players down here, the main aims are to promote inclusivity and respect within the game.
Everyone had a really good turnout. It was nice. Good to see a bunch of different societies coming together. The results didn't go our way much. We've already been talking about trying to organise games against other teams that we didn't play today. So another tournament like this would be really good.
12 teams from a plethora of nations competed in the 18 matches over the course of the day. The rest of the world side, formed of players from multiple nationalities, went on and became champions by defeating Japan in Sheffield's very own World Cup final.
It's good to get some diversity out here. It's good to speak to new people, see potential ballers in the making. Yeah, pretty decent.
So, today's been a huge success, with over 100 uni students turning up to play the beautiful game. Friendships have been formed and football has been played. Will Atherton, This Week in Sheffield.
And lastly, we go back to the topic of the US election. 2 US students here in Sheffield talk about what this election has meant to them and how it has made an impact on this side of the pond. Coming from very different parts of the country, they share their unique perspective on the political scene. Joseph Murphy reports.
Hi, I'm Joseph Murphy, and this is This Week in Sheffield. I'm here with...
I'm Jack Richter. It's nice to meet you, man.
And where are you from, Jack?
I'm from North Alabama, Huntsville area.
So, Jack, who will you be voting for in this year's election?
I will not be voting for anyone this election. I'm typically a non-voter, with exceptions to third parties when they are running in my area. I've been out of the States for a while. Unfortunately, I can't vote while living here. in the States. I'd have to go back home to do that. If I was to do that, then I would either vote for the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, or the PSL, the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
So it seems that you have a big disagreement with sort of the binary of the US political state. Could we go into that for a minute?
Absolutely, man. I mean, when it comes to the nature of US politics, it really is very hegemonized into the fact that both political parties are kind of the two wings of the same bird. The current two political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, seem to just represent two different aspects of the rich in America, but they don't represent your average working class person or your average person in the street.
How would you describe the political climate in the United States today?
It's very polarized, but I believe a lot of that is artificial. I believe a lot of that is artificially induced, and it's usually done through the auspices of the culture war dynamic, where it seems that most of the actual concrete issues or things that Americans are concerned with are brushed aside in favor of culture war narratives.
What swings you towards a candidate?
Candidates that genuinely represent where they come from. People that are, I personally like candidates that have less of a connection to the old political dynasties and actually represent where they come from.
What changes would you like to see implemented by a future president?
It's the same thing that every American has been saying for years, man. We want job security, we want economic stability, we want better health care, we want education opportunities. The same, like, our demands have never been extreme or out there. It's the same thing that everybody has been asking for, and the same thing that every president has promised that they would do. Yet, whenever they get into office, the geopolitics or the big moneyed interests take over.
What do you feel that the biggest challenges facing the US are today?
That's a tough one, man. I guess it's the nature of the biggest, like, systematically, I guess the biggest would be the US's declining role in global politics. You can use the term empire, you can use the term superpower, hegemon, whatever you want. That's shifting.
What do you feel that the general outcome of the election will be? Who do you think will win?
I think Trump's gonna win, man.
Hands down?
Hands down, dude. I think Trump's gonna win.
How so?
It just, it's just a feeling that you get, but maybe, I could be wrong. I think a lot of that had to do with the disenfranchisement of Arab voters a lot, especially considering how the Democrats and Biden have handled the situation in Israel and Palestine, that it's disenfranchised a lot of Arab voters. So I think some of those guys are going to be basically doing, like, what's the term, like a punishment vote or a boycott vote, where they vote for the opposite just to kind of punish the Democrats for not living up to what they were saying they were going to do.
You feel that the handling of the state in Israel and Palestine by the United States and by the future presidential candidates, you feel like that is basically a big swing point for the election?
Dude, for a lot of people in America, it is. Because they tell us that we can't have health care or better education because it's too expensive, and then our government spends tons and tons of money of our tax dollars on sending weapons to Ukraine and Israel.
This is Chloe Schofield. So what do you think the overall outcome of the election will be? Who do you think will win?
Right now, I have no idea. The polls are so tight that it could go literally either way. It's so funny because I'm having flashbacks now to when Donald Trump was up against Hillary Clinton. It was the same thing, like the whole time it was looking one way or the other way, and with all the battleground states, we really just won't know until election night, which is going to be a really long night for me. I'm going to be anxiously awaiting the verdict.
What do you think the main topics of discussion should be in a presidential debate?
I think, in general, a lot of it does come down to the economy for a lot of middle-class people in America, because that is, is probably what's going to affect them the most, or things like tax reforms. I think that those are important. But beyond that, I feel like presidents should be focusing on public service, so like putting in some sort of social care for the people of the United States, because in my personal opinion, I think that that's what presidents are for. I mean, it's not just a diplomat that's discussing things with other countries in the world. They should be looking towards domestic policy that's going to help those who cannot help themselves.
So you feel that whilst America is a massive player on the global stage, you would like to see the more internalized decisions being made?
Absolutely. I think that there's so much wrong with America right now that I feel like we should be less focusing on putting our funding into other countries and their exploits. And I think that funding should be reallocated to people that really need it in our country who are already suffering. There's no need to put that funding elsewhere, honestly. My hope for Kamala Harris is that she's going to bring back class into the government. If she were to be elected, we will bring back this era of politics where everyone's allowed to have an opinion, and it's not a life or death issue for a lot of people anymore.
In terms of sort of how it actually affects interactions between people, how would you say that America being so prominent on the political stage affects that for the social level for the average American?
I think it's the politics right now is really just embarrassing on the global level. Like, I feel like everyone laughs at America for all the things that do end up going on, and like I said, I just wish that there was a little bit more class and a little bit more dignity that was held into our politics.
And now we come back to UK politics. Last week, Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves announced the first Labour budget in 14 years. The announcement made headlines across the UK, but here on This Week in Sheffield, we're looking into what it means to you, Sheffield students and locals. I spoke to the Mayor of South Yorkshire, Oliver Coppard, about how this budget might have an impact on the local area. This includes ambitious new plans on spending and investment across various sectors in South Yorkshire, including many things which directly impact our day-to-day lives, such as public transport. Here's Oliver Coppard sharing his thoughts on the budget.
Top three things for the budget. Well, obviously, a single pot settlement is the big win for South Yorkshire. That puts us on par with the very best MTAs, mayoral combined authorities in the country. Previously, Manchester and Birmingham were the only two places, Greater Manchester, West Midlands, were the only two places with that approach to funding that had been given by the government, and now South Yorkshire alongside West Yorkshire, Merseyside and the North East are going to be the places that have this flexibility basically around the money that we're given to spend, and that is a big win for us because it allows us to make those decisions about what we spend our money on rather than being told by government, you've got, for instance, £20 million here, £30 million there, you can only spend those budgets on specific things. We get that flexibility, and that's huge. The big broad things in the budget around housing, around the NHS, around money for the minimum wage, those are all big wins for South Yorkshire because that means the population of South Yorkshire, people who live here, get better public services, get more money in their pocket, and that is good for our economy. And then specific things like funding for Supertram being confirmed is a massive win as well. So there's lots in the budget for us, and I'm really pleased to see some of those things come to fruition because we've been working on them for months.
Yeah, you mentioned Supertram, and that's been under your authority since March this year. So what's that been like generally, running Supertram? It's a big thing for
people will be relieved to know that on a day-to-day basis I'm not the person in the control room deciding on where the trams go. It's great. I mean, look, I said when I took this job on I wanted to create a world-class public transport system in South Yorkshire. I grew up in South Yorkshire, this is my home. I grew up at a time when we had a world-class public transport system, 2p buses for kids, etc. People who grew up here will remember that stuff. And that has slowly but surely gone into a spiral of decline. I had the opportunity to bring the trams back under public control, which is a big move for us, but it's been the right thing because since we took it back under public control, we've seen revenues go up, we've seen fare evasion go down massively, we've seen much happier staff, we've seen the opportunity now to invest in our tram network, so we're now talking to the government about how do we not just renew the network, make sure that the tram tracks, the trains, the trams themselves, the overhead lines are all kind of being renewed and fixed, but over time how do we extend the tram network so that it works for more people across South Yorkshire, and that is a massive win for us because effective functional places with good economies have effective functional public transport networks, and the tram is a massive part of that.
Yeah, so what's the main kind of plan for achieving that in South Yorkshire and with the new funding as well from the government?
Yeah, so first and foremost we've got to renew the network, so we've got to make sure that the tram tracks, the new trams, the overhead lines are all being put in, and that's hugely expensive. There's no denying that. We've got to fund that effectively, and that's a conversation with government, and hopefully that's what the government meant when they said they were funding Supertram the other day. But that's going to cost some money. Then we've got to work out how to extend the tram network and where to take the tram. Places like Doncaster Sheffield Airport should be on that map. Places like Stocksbridge, places like the hospitals should be on that map. We are already extending to Magna, for instance, in Rotherham. Out to Parkway is already there, but we've got to do more than that. So we're absolutely engaging in a conversation with government through the spending review, with our local authorities, with our communities about where to go, how to do it, how to fund it. But that's the way forward for our tram network.
You mentioned Doncaster Airport. Is that a priority of yours?
Yes, it's a massive priority for me to get that right, to get that back up and running. I was very clear from day one, we need a functioning airport in South Yorkshire. I want that airport to not just be an airport in and of itself for flights for people to go on holiday, which is really important, but it's also got to be a sustainable aviation hub, because you've got to be realistic about the path that we're on in terms of our climate and our environment. But there are solutions for that climate breakdown that we have in South Yorkshire. We're a world leader when it comes to sustainable aviation. The University of Sheffield is one of the only places, if not the only place, I think, in the country that can certify those synthetic aviation fuels. That's a massive opportunity for us. The first sustainable transatlantic flight that was powered on those sustainable aviation fuels was powered by Sheffield University Research. We're in the lead on that already. We've got hybrid air vehicles coming into the region. We've got Boeing here already with their only manufacturing facility in Europe. We can build on that with the sustainable aviation hub, and the airport's a massive part of how we get that right.
On climate and environment, what do you make of Labour's commitments on environment? Because they've not been completely clear, and since the budget they've pledged that they will be energy carbon neutral by 2030, and Sheffield is a very green place, greenest city in the UK, and people here are very proud of that. Yeah. So what do you make of Labour's climate commitments?
Well, I am a Labour mayor, and my priorities are absolutely around climate. We had a citizens' assembly in South Yorkshire, which we're still working through how to actually kind of lead those recommendations, how to get them into the council's plans. And before I go out and publish that, I want to make sure that we've got all our councils lined up and those ducks in a row. We're planting 1.4 million trees in South Yorkshire, one for every single person, and also we are doing all the work we are on public transport, not least going through the public consultation at the moment on buses. So anybody that's watching this should fill in the public consultation, tell us what you want us to do around buses. Already mentioned about the tram, active travel, everything else. So we're doing a huge amount in South Yorkshire, but the Labour government are also supporting that work too. So I was with Ed Miliband on Friday, the Secretary of State for the Department for Environment, talking for 90 minutes about what those plans look like for South Yorkshire when it comes to things like small modular nuclear reactors, when it comes to hydrogen, when it comes to industry and the energy infrastructure that we need. How do we do that and lead the way in South Yorkshire? And Ed Miliband is a South Yorkshire MP, so we're working hand in glove with Ed on some of those plans, and we're really ambitious for what that can mean, not just for the environment, which is critical, but for jobs and growth as well.
Do you think Sheffield could pave a way for other cities and regions in the UK?
I think we already are. We have the biggest clean tech sector in the UK here in South Yorkshire, and that's as a result of things like the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, which straddles Rotherham and Sheffield. That's down to the University of Sheffield and the work that they do. So Sheffield in particular is massively leading the way already. I want to double down on that. I don't just want to lead the UK, I want to lead globally, and I think there's an argument to say we're already in that space with the AMRC, the advanced manufacturing work we do, but we've got to do that across the piece, and that's why I'm investing in things like hybrid air vehicles with a loan to them, with the work we're doing with Boeing and other things besides, because that is where our strengths lie, and that's where our future lies, and the opportunity to grow the economy in South Yorkshire in a sustainable way.
And besides the environment, what else are you most passionate about as mayor?
Well, look, we've already talked about public transport. That's a massive part of how we grow the economy of South Yorkshire. Hugely enthusiastic about what we are doing on the environment. Health is the other one that's a big one for me. I'm the only mayor in the country to have initially taken on the chairmanship of what's called the Integrated Care Partnership, essentially a part of the system we now have for directing the health services across South Yorkshire. Andy Burnham's now doing that as well. We're talking to the government about what more we can do besides. We're working with world leaders like Google on wearable tech. We're doing a bunch of things in that health space. We've invested £2.2 million in something called Beds for Babies, which is a plan to give every single child in South Yorkshire a guaranteed safe place to sleep. If you're under 5 now in South Yorkshire, you have that guarantee. We will give you a bed, a Moses basket, a cot. We're working on a huge amount more besides. Health is a massive opportunity for us to change the dynamic of South Yorkshire, the future of South Yorkshire for the better. And so they're the spaces that I'm probably most interested in.
Yeah, and just to finish up, for many of our viewers, what they will find most important is how does the budget impact students? And Sheffield is a big student city, so what would you say, how would the budget impact students?
Well, look, it's not just about students that are there today at the university today, but it's about the people that we want to keep in Sheffield and in South Yorkshire. Because you've come to university here, you might not be from South Yorkshire, but we want you to make your home and your life here because you're brilliant and we want you to stay. So it's about what can we do on things like housing. There was a load more money for housing in the budget. It's things like how can we make the economy work better so there are more jobs and opportunities in places like South Yorkshire and across the north more broadly, so people can stay near and go farther, so they can stay here and build those careers. But it's also about the things that don't just affect students but affect all of us, things like access to the NHS, things like access to those public services like public transport that are so important for everybody in South Yorkshire, perhaps students in some cases most of all when it comes to public transport and things like that. But we've got to get all of that right, and students are a massive part of our community. I care passionately about keeping students here and giving you the best experience you can have, and the budget was about part of that. Was part of that, but we also need to do some of that by leading here in South Yorkshire, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think what I'd like to say to students that are watching this is you're an incredibly important part of the community of South Yorkshire, and I'm really proud that you chose South Yorkshire as your home for this part of your journey, and I'd love you to stay for longer. I want you to build your life here, build opportunity here, create that wealth here in our region, contribute to our society, our community, because we love having you here, and long may it continue.
Next week, world leaders will meet in Baku, the capital city of Azerbaijan, for the COP29 summit. The aim is to strengthen commitments on reducing emissions and advance plans for a transition to renewable energy. Climate change is a big topic all around the world, including in Sheffield. So how is our university doing its part in reducing its impact on the planet? I'm joined here today by our Students' Union Sustainability and Welfare Officer, Nadya Ghani. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Hi Adam, I'm really good. Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. So could you tell me a bit more about what you do and what inspired you to take this role?
Very good question. So I was kind of always aware of the officers when I joined uni. I started in September of 2020, and I think the earliest memory that I have of a sabbatical officer kind of doing something for the student population was when at the time they managed to get rent back to students for students who were living in university accommodation and weren't actually staying there. So that was kind of my entry into the sabbatical officer world. And then as the years went by, I voted every year in elections, read the manifestos, didn't get very involved with elections apart from that, just kind of based on the manifestos, was kind of voting for whoever I wanted. And then a friend of mine ran, currently the Liberation and Inclusions Officer, Tomas, who I met through Canoe Club. And then he kind of fully opened my eyes to it. And it was always something that was always at the back of my mind. And last year I was like, okay, well, this is kind of my last chance to run. And there are things that I'd like to work on, things that I'd like to see change and happen and whatever. So I decided to put my hat in, and here we are.
And have there been any things that you have done so far in your role?
So one of the things that was on my manifesto actually, and it's currently ongoing, is collecting donations of fancy dress to open the fancy dress corner in the swap shop. I've also gotten the green light to be able to incentivize that, to give free Foundry tickets out to people who use it. So once we get enough collections in, we're going to kind of set that up and then start doing that. So yeah, should be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the one that I can sort of tick off right now. But yeah.
And besides things like the swap shop, which is obviously great for sustainability, what other projects are you working on with the SU for sustainability on campus?
So one of the things that we're looking at is introducing, we have a new strategy that's coming out, and one of the things around it is kind of around sustainability, obviously. So I'm currently working with different members of the senior team to make sure that we do our part, and there is somewhat of a sustainability strategy in the SU as well. This is something that the university is currently looking at as well, to redo their sustainability strategy, and I'm involved in some of the groups for that one as well. So it was kind of this is the time to do it. This is the time to, both with our new strategy and with the university doing kind of their rewrite of it, is definitely the part to mirror that and kind of have a public strong strategy out there. So that will encompass things around food, again around procurement, finances, and yeah.
And you mentioned that the university was able to give rent back to students during the pandemic, yes. Right? So housing is a major issue for students, yes. And around this time of year, we live in a cold country and bills are high, and for a lot of students that might be a problem. So Is there any support that the university is able to offer students that are facing financial difficulties?
Yes, however, with the caveat that I think a lot of people are aware that the university is struggling financially, not just our university, but universities across the board. The higher education sector is a bit in shambles. Yesterday they announced a slight increase in, tuition fees, which is something that's very much on our radar, on all the officers' radars. So with a slight caveat that the uni doesn't have as much money to put into their, I was going to mention the cost of living, like hardship fund, that students should be able to access. I believe currently it's not even live to access because the university is kind of finalising how much money exactly can go in there. But rest assured that we are kind of keeping an eye on it and making sure that that will be in place for students who need it and when they need it. Because, as you said, now is like the time where, with bills going up, it's colder, it gets dark sooner, it has an impact on students' mental health. This is when students need the most support. And although I empathise that the university is struggling financially, it has a responsibility to support its students.
So have you worked with any of these students that have come looking for support at the SU personally?
I personally have not, but I have heard, I work very closely with the Student Advice Centre, which is based in the SU, and they give a lot of help to students who need, academic, housing, finance help. So it's kind of my duty to be aware of what's happening. And they told me that in intro week, which is the week before welcome week, before, the majority of students even come back, they'd already given like 5 or 6 referrals to students for food banks. And that was, in September before anyone even came back. So I am quite aware of the struggles that students are facing. But yeah.
Besides food banks that you mentioned, what other things is the Student Advice Centre able to do?
They're able to help with academic matters, whether it's an academic appeal, whether there's something going on, whether one department hasn't approved your extenuating circumstances, things like that. They're able to help with housing issues. They're really good at that. Finances as well, whether that be dealing with your student finance or stuff like that. They can help with leave of absences. They can help with a lot of wide-ranging kind of matters. But the advisors in there are brilliant.
Yeah, and back to sustainability.
Yes.
What other projects could we potentially see on campus over this next year?
From me personally, or just in general?
Well, maybe from you personally. I
Okay.
mean, what you're working on or what the SU is planning. Generally what we could see.
Okay, so kind of relevant to now, COP29, as you mentioned, runs from the 11th of November to the 22nd. I've worked with Sustainability Committee and a bunch of other societies to put on a wide range of events, which will be happening over the next 2 weeks. It starts on Sunday the 10th with a walk with Conservation Society and, leads on to events and panel talks and kind of all sorts. So that's kind of probably the one that is going to be the most visible with the next 2 weeks, and I really encourage students to get involved with that. They've put a lot of work in it, all these different societies and collaborating and working together. In general, that's something that I would like to see more. There's a lot of different kind of green focused and sustainability focused societies which all want kind of similar things, whether that be fossil free careers or outdoor learning classrooms or stuff like that, and they all each individually want it, but there seems to be a little bit of a misconnect in there, where I would much rather try and establish this year a good foundation of a joint student climate movement, where all of these asks, exactly, a cohesive movement where all of these asks are coming from a wide student body. Because if kind of I go into a uni space and I go, this is really cool, this is something that we could work on, sure, the uni might listen to me, but if I've got the backing of and data from 50-60 students who are this is something that we'd really want, then obviously that would help as well.
You know what, outdoor classes that you mentioned would be so cool.
I
know
right?
that we don't exactly have the weather for that a lot of the time, but sometimes in May and June that would be very nice.
100%. And think also outdoor just learning environments. So for your architecture students, for your landscape students who are having these modules where their course entails them to plan a building or something, you could have kind of that on the ground, be plan it in this plot of land specifically, or our biosciences, thinking about our ecologists, they would be able to access and have access to all these field work but still be in Sheffield, and just in general, or having benches that you can just book and with your group mates or something and work on something for that. That would be really cool.
That would be great. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about your work and what you do?
Probably around the sustainability around February time. This is not still confirmed when it's going to be, but last year my predecessor Joe had a plant-made March like campaign, trying to encourage students to eat plant-based because of all the beneficial impacts that it has on the environment, whereas a heavy meat-based diet, and hers was very heavy on like kind of that aspect of it, and so the SU put on a bunch of deals with our outlets and stuff, and I want to do kind of something similar but kind of focus more on the education aspect of it all. So the plan behind it would be to organize a bunch of talks and panels and kind of more like education kind of around it all, put vinyls up around the store being like, this is why we do things, this is why we don't have red meat anymore because it was voted out, and we for environmental and ethical reasons kind of just don't have it anymore. And yeah.
So when would these talks kind of take place?
Probably around February time. Okay. It's all very in the works right now. I have to do the legwork and set it up. But
I'm sure that when that happens, we'll be covering that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe you can come back and talk about it.
Oh my God, that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
That would be so good. Yes, please.
Well, it's been really great talking to you today. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. And yeah, I'm looking forward to what you get up to. That's all on This Week in Sheffield. Thanks for joining us as we've covered everything from the US election's impact on our community to the latest in sports, music and local issues. Be sure to follow us on social media for updates and let us know if there's a story you'd like to see covered. I'm Husicka and we'll see you next time with more stories that matter to Sheffield and its students. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye for now.